months back saying you guys having the staff development day. So, and asked me to come speak, and yeah, I was thrilled for the opportunity. So, before we get started, how many of you guys have ADHD or neurodiverse? A lot of you guys. Okay, cool. So, my name is Michael Snyder. I'm an ADHD coach based here in Austin, Texas. I'm originally from New York, but I've been in Austin since 2013. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 10 years old. Struggled all my life. Tried going to college, in and out of school. Took a leave of absence. I tried going back. And then finally, I was just like, you know what, enough's enough. And I just went into the working world. I worked at a trucking company. This is back in New York. I worked in real estate for 10 years, and then I moved here in 2013. In 2013, I did a little bit of real estate, a little bit of mortgage stuff when I moved here. Wanted to change, worked in tech for a year, and then took some time off. And then it was September of 2017 where I read this book on ADHD, and 30 pages and I was in tears. And in the meantime, I was on off medication my whole entire life, right? And right then and there, I knew I wanted to do something with ADHD, but I had no idea what this was going to look like. All right, so sure enough, I volunteered at an orphanage in Peru for a month. Then I went and lived in Indonesia. I bought a one-way ticket 3 weeks before I was going to leave, typical ADHD fashion, right? Didn't know when I was coming back. When I was there, I met someone. They said I inspired them to make a change, and I was like, hey, you know what? I wonder if ADHD coaching is an actual thing. And sure enough, looked it up. There was one coaching school in all of the country. Immediately listened to and actually I'll show you the quote which really stuck with me right here. This is the last quote from the founder, Dave, and I can never say his last name, he's a good friend of mine, but, and right then and there, I knew I was gonna be an ADHD coach, all right? I immediately started going to school for it, and here I am now, 6 years later, an ADHD coach. Any questions? Cool. Also, by the way, as I go through this, just stop me if you have any questions. I'll stop kind of end of each section, all right? But I don't want, this isn't gonna be death by PowerPoint, and I wanna make this as interactive as possible for you guys, all right? So before I go into goals for today, I wanna tell you actually a really funny story that happened to me this morning in typical ADHD fashion. So I get here, I was all prepared, I check my backpack, it's a new backpack. I get here, I'm early, I'm all set, I go to set things up. All of a sudden, I take out my notes for today. I was like, all right, let me get my laptop out. Left my laptop at home. Yep. And 20 minutes to go before we start. No joke, this is at 9:40 this morning. And my wife is a godsend. I texted her, I knew she was on calls, and my wife is also almost 37 weeks pregnant. Yeah. So I was like, honey, you're not gonna believe this. This is gonna make a great story to start out today, all right? So even me, and this is how many of you guys are gonna be in the next class? A bunch of you guys? Okay, cool. This is how important routine is to me. Last night, my wife asked me, she's like, my laptop was at 95%. It's plenty of power. She's like, you know what, just plug it in. I never ever plug my laptop in. I always leave it on our kitchen island. And that one little tweak in my routine, and trying to get out here, and I left the laptop. But anyway, we got it, we're here, we're good to go. So, some goals for today. So, I'm gonna take you guys through what I do with my coaching clients. Typically, I start with an intake session, and once you get through the intake session, I spend 2 to 4 sessions really talking about what is ADHD and executive functions. What I found is that whether someone comes in who's in college or 65 years old, most people don't really have a great understanding of what ADHD is. So what I do is I take them through talking about what is ADHD, executive functions, dopamine, working memory, emotional regulation, and really kind of like spell it out. Most of what I'm gonna go through here today, some of it you can Google, but I'm trying to really paint a good picture for you guys of like what it actually looks like in your everyday life, okay? So talking about some goals for today. So one is I want to change your conceptual understanding of ADHD, all right? I want you to understand yourselves and your brain better. I want you to pay attention to things differently, shifting your mindset and your perspective. And I want you to be able to advocate better for yourself and communicate differently. Right? This is a working memory issue. This is where I struggle. Hey, could you help me with this? Okay. Any questions? Cool. No, not there yet. Okay. So when it comes to managing our ADHD, it's typically easy for us to work with it and not against it. A lot of us, I find, we work against our ADHD, and it's always feeling like an uphill battle. Everything's very effortful. Okay, no matter what we do, we just feel like we're spinning our wheels. We also feel like we're doing a bunch of things we feel like we should be doing, and not things that might not be serving us. Okay, so anytime I hear anybody say, "Oh, I should, I have to, I ought to, I got to," I stop them and I'm like, "Hey, what do you mean you should?" Well, this is how someone else does it. Well, does it work for you? No, it's really tiring. Okay, well, maybe we should try something else. What's worked for you in the past? Okay. Now, the name ADHD can be a little misleading. It should probably be close to attention dysregulation disorder. Okay. Typically, we have more than enough attention, but we just can't harness it in the right direction at the right time with any consistency. Okay. That sound familiar to you guys? Okay. So really, rather than being a focus issue, it's really more of a self-regulation issue. Any questions? Cool. So ADHD, ultimately, it is an executive function impairment. Pardon me with this thing, I'm not used to using this. So it's an executive function impairment. Now, are you guys familiar with what executive functions are? We're going to talk a lot more about it later on, but anyone want to kind of? Anybody else? Okay.
Explain it, please.
Yeah, sure. So in a nutshell, executive functions are a set of mind tools that help us to actively problem solve. All right? So think of time management, organization, planning, thinking towards a goal. Those are executive functions. Picture tools in your garage, and you need to build a bookshelf or a desk, and you have some of the wrong tools, or you're missing that Allen key, right? Can you still build it? Maybe, right? But it's going to be really effortful for you to build it. Make sense? And we'll talk a ton more about this later. But I really want to look at behavior versus impairment. Okay, so behavior, definition-wise, actions, reactions, or conduct in response to situations or stimuli. They're influenced by impairments, but they can be changed. Okay? Impairment is a condition or limitation that hinders a person's well-being to an extent. Impairments require accommodations. Okay, we're going to talk a lot about accommodations today, or in this session and in the next session. Okay, we don't fix it, but we accommodate for it. Make sense? Cool. This is an accommodation. Okay, I will not remember everything, even though I've done this hundreds and hundreds of times. Okay, still, so I'm not all over the place. For your guys' sake, I glance down at this to keep me on track. Okay, otherwise we'll be here for a couple hours. All right. So impairment or ADHD doesn't necessarily define a person's capabilities or potential. With support and accommodations, those of us with ADHD and executive dysfunction can live very fulfilling lives. Imposter syndrome, a lot of times, have you guys felt that before? Yeah? Okay, cool. So imposter syndrome can be caused by trying to be neurotypical when we're not. Remember before I mentioned about should doing things, okay? Right? Should, to me, is very much like, oh, well, I have to do it this way, all right? I'm trying to do it this way. But typically the world is geared more towards neurotypicals. It's very linear. We're more big picture thinkers, more creative, all right? So it's not really about trying harder, but it's about bringing the right accommodations in so we don't have to try harder. Some of the major challenges, once again, are self-regulation and thinking towards a goal, all right? People always say, I need a plan. Okay, why do you need a plan? Or what is a plan? Well, I don't know. I need a plan. Okay. Well, what's entailed in a plan? We're going to talk about this in the next session more. But a plan doesn't tell you how to achieve said goal. Something usually I find is off within the process. So in my coaching, I typically focus more on the process versus the outcome, because I find cognitively something's off within the process. So ultimately, we want to make the thinking for you guys easier, okay? Because when thinking's difficult, there's a huge urge to escape, okay? My coach calls it the great escape, right? I feel like it, I need to think about it, right? Well, I don't feel like doing this right now. Or when's the last time someone asked you a question and you're like, you know what? Let me think about that and get back to you. And you actually thought about it and got back to them. My wife and I were joking around when I was going over this with her, and she's like, oh, you do that to me all the time. And I was like, yeah, I know, right? The thinking is hard, right? I'm trying to avoid it. I'm trying to escape doing the thinking. Make sense? Okay. So self-regulation. So self-regulation defined is directing an action back on yourself to change your behavior, to change the future. But what it's really about overriding urges. Urges, okay. Urges defined. An urge is a strong desire or impulse, all right? The urge to sit down, the urge to talk, the urge to open social media, the urge to fidget with something. I was trying to see if any of you guys were fidgeting. There you go, you got this fidget, okay? Right? Or clicking your pen, okay? A lot of times it comes from, we're more susceptible to agitated boredom, all right? So you're sitting there waiting in line, you're this, all of a sudden you're like this, and you're like this, then you take your phone out, right? Those are all urges. It's effortful to try and stop those urges, okay? And they resonate from feelings and the desire to feel good right now. Once again, think of agitated boredom. You're not really thinking about it, okay? But you want to get comfortable in that moment. So you're going to do whatever it is. These days, for a lot of us, it might be opening up social media. Anybody else have like any urges that you typically have to try and avoid? You want to share, other than kind of some of the ones I maybe mentioned?
Eating when I'm not hungry.
Perfect, great one. And I'll tell you, talking about self-regulation, excuse me. Regulating ourselves from things is effortful, okay? So eating when you're not hungry. When do you typically eat when you're not hungry?
When I'm avoiding doing something else.
Okay, so when you're avoiding, okay, great. What else? How about nighttime when we're sitting around, okay? I know that's when I'm very susceptible to eating, right, snacks. During the day, it's fine. Eat the same thing for breakfast every day, same thing for lunch. Then if calls finish up around 4, then I'm like, ooh, I'm kind of sitting around and reading a book, and then I'm heading to the pantry, okay? Then especially when I'm sitting on the couch later on at night. This, once again, agitated boredom, also very much so about self-regulation, all right? My wife, she used to buy these things when we first got married called, from Trader Joe's, they're these sour gummy candies called Scandinavian Swimmers. You guys, okay, they're amazing, okay, from Trader Joe's. She'd be like, honey, I got you these treats. They don't come in this tiny little bag, all right? They come in this big ass bag. And she would take them and then put them in, one of those little jars or something in the pantry, and I'd come down between calls, refill my water, and I'd stop, be like, oh, I'm just gonna have 1 or 2 of these right now. Okay. Come down later, just have 1 or 2 more, all right? Usually during the daytime, not a huge problem. Then nighttime comes though, and it's like, once that thing touches my lips, I'm like, no, I can't stop, can't stop. So it takes a lot of effort to control my urge to not have those. It takes a lot of self-regulation, okay? So how do I solve for that? Honey, please don't buy these things anymore. If they're not there, I don't have to worry about overriding that urge. It's no longer effortful. I won't even think about it. Does that all make sense? Cool. So when we're uncomfortable, reflexively, we're gonna do something to get comfortable. Neurotypical brains can stand boring things longer, all right? I'm gonna say this next phrase many, many times today, okay? But I think it's important. So anything ambiguous, tedious, boring, or repetitive are more challenging for people with ADHD. That resonate? Okay. And we're going to come back to that later. One. Dopamine. You guys familiar with what dopamine is?
Yes.
Okay. What are you laughing at? Something about that.